southeast Scotland, eastern parts of England on Saturday. Elsewhere, many places will be dry and bright with some sunny spells in the west and staying largely dry into Monday as well, and also turning colder.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. And now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Darren McCaffrey, and join me on the briefing Monday to Thursday at 3 p.m. You'll get your afternoon fix of all the latest political stories, debate and analysis, as well as interviews with some of the biggest names in UK politics.
It's a problem that affects the whole world, Darren.
From Westminster to Cardiff, Edinburgh and Belfast, if it's happening in UK politics, we've got it covered. That's the briefing with me, Darren McCaffrey, Monday to Thursday, 3 p.m. on GB News.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Liam Halligan. Join me every weekday at 1 p.m. for On the Money, your daily dose of economics, business and consumer news. I've got 25 years experience covering economics and finance. We hold grown-up discussions with a host of experts who really know their stuff. We can't buy gas and store it. That was a mistake, wasn't it?
I think it was a mistake.
Even you, Liam, don't have a crystal ball.
Inflation's a real threat.
Every weekday at 1, you're On the Money.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome once again to On the Money, where we're focused on the impact of this Russia-Ukraine conflict on you. The Kremlin's military campaign continues, with all its ghastly humanitarian implications. But the East-West economic war is also important, as energy prices spike and ever more Western companies withdraw from Russia. I'm Liam Halligan, and for the next hour we'll be talking about Russia-Ukraine, what this war means for the world economy and for you. But first, it's the GB News headlines with Rhiannon Jones.
Thank you, Liam. Here are your top stories from the GB newsroom. Some breaking news this hour. An Estonian-owned cargo ship has sunk off the Ukrainian coast near Odessa following an explosion. The ship's manager says it may have been hit by a mine. He says 4 crew members are missing. That as a Bangladeshi cargo ship was struck by a missile at the Ukrainian Black Sea port of Olvia. This video purportedly shows the vessel on fire. It was posted by the Ukrainian government. 1 crew member has been killed, and the Bangladeshi government says rescue efforts are underway to save others. Meanwhile, there are conflicting reports on whether the Ukrainian city of Kherson has been seized by Russian troops. The UK's Ministry of Defence says the cities of Kharkiv, Chernihiv and Mariupol remain in Ukrainian hands despite heavy shelling. Speaking in Lithuania, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said Russian aggression must be contained.
Putin must lose in Ukraine. We're helping Ukraine defend itself. Our defensive weapons from the United Kingdom are now being used to stop Russian tanks. And it's vital at this juncture that we keep our foot on the gas. We've worked with the US, the EU and G7 to cut off funding for Putin's war machine, kicking Russian banks out of the financial system. We've also shut our airspace to Russian planes, and we're fast-forwarding sanctions against Russian oligarchs. But we need to go further.
Foreign Secretary Liz Truss there. Ceasefire negotiations between Kiev and Moscow are due to resume this afternoon. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says his country's ready to talk, but he's warned Ukraine's military infrastructure will continue to be targeted.
We are ready to talk, but we will continue our operation. We can't allow ourselves to preserve infrastructure threatening the safety of the Russian Federation in Ukraine. Demilitarization in this sense, I mean the destruction of the infrastructure that threatens us, will be completed. Even if we sign the peace treaty, it must include such an article.
Meanwhile, in his latest statement, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said his country's defence lines are still holding against the Russian attack.
A week ago, at 4 a.m., Russia invaded Ukraine. Our independent Ukraine. Our land. Chernihiv, Sumy, Mykolaiv are holding their defences. Odessa. They seek to ruin our Odessa. But the one thing they're going to see is the seabed of the Black Sea, as they themselves are at the bottom.
Volodymyr Zelensky there. The International Criminal Court is launching an investigation into alleged war crimes in the largest referral in the history of the ICC. The UK and 37 allies have called for a probe into Russia's atrocities. It follows reports that cluster and vacuum bombs have been dropped in residential areas. Moscow denies it's targeting civilians. Here, the Health Secretary has told NHS leaders to stop using energy supplied by Russian-owned company Gazprom. More than a dozen NHS trusts in England are thought to be using the firm, along with several local councils. Last year, the contracts were reportedly worth £16 million. Sajid Javid has also requested a wider review of any Russian role in supply chains across the health service. The sporting world is also taking action, with Formula One announcing it's terminated its Russian Grand Prix contract. Meanwhile, athletes from Russia and Belarus will not be allowed to compete at the 2022 Winter Paralympics in Beijing. The International Paralympic Committee has reversed its original decision to allow them to take part from Saturday under a neutral flag. That announcement was met by criticism and the threat of a boycott. The IPC says the situation in the athlete villages has become untenable. In other news, Sarah Everard's family has been paying tribute to her a year after she was murdered by a police officer. In a statement, they say they miss Sarah all the time and have been overwhelmed by the support from the public. Ms. Everard was killed by serving Met Police officer Wayne Cousins as she walked home in South London. The Ministry of Justice plans to close almost half of its Nightingale courts in the UK within weeks. The temporary courts were set up to cope with the backlog of cases during the COVID-19 pandemic. 11 are due to be shut down at the end of the month. The remaining 12 will stay open until March next year. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to Liam and On the Money.
Coming up on the money today, oil prices have surged from $113 to $118 a barrel on global markets. Wholesale gas prices are spiralling upward too, sparking fears of higher utility bills. As this Russia-Ukraine conflict escalates, the economic fallout's being felt here, driving the cost of living even higher. During this hour, we dive into these issues, asking what you can do to beat the squeeze. And for today's in-depth Money Talks interview, I'm joined by Mike Cherry. He's National Chairman of the Federation of Small Businesses. Those small and medium-sized firms are the lifeblood of the British economy. They employ 2/3 of us and drive the bulk of our economic activity. Many such firms are suffering, with national insurance rises, supply chain pressures, and now even higher energy bills still to come. As ever, I want your questions, opinions, ideas. What do you think of the issues raised in today's On the Money? How do they affect you? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews. I'll read out some of your emails later in the show, so stay with us. This is GB News on TV and DAB plus digital radio. I'm Liam Halligan. You're On the Money. Now, Joe Biden used this week's State of the Union address to close US airspace to Russian planes. He warned Vladimir Putin would continue to pay a high price for the invasion of Ukraine. Sanctions, though, however justified, are a two-way street, imposing costs on Western nations, particularly energy importers like the UK. The price of oil surged again to $118 a barrel overnight, up from just $70 in December. The RAC says average petrol and diesel prices per litre in the UK will soon hit £1.55 and £1.60 respectively. Industry insiders go further, warning we could soon see £2 per litre if this Russia-Ukraine conflict is sustained. As wholesale gas prices spiral, UK households face a huge rise in our utility bills already this April, given that gas is used to generate electricity. Back in October, energy regulator Ofgem said utility bills for the average household must be capped at £1,277 a year. That cap's being lifted to £1,970 next month, a massive 54% rise. That we already know. But the impact of this Russia-Ukraine conflict on global markets means energy experts now predict another massive rise in October to £2,900 a year for our household utility bills. And that's the predictive average annual utility bill from October. Many would pay much more. No wonder the government faces increasingly loud demands to extend more support to hard-pressed households. Now, Russia's invasion has sparked not just government sanctions. Western firms have invested heavily since the Soviet Union collapsed 30 years ago. But now the likes of BP, Shell, Ford, Boeing and countless others are severing business links with Russia, an economy of almost 150 million. Overnight clothes retailers H&M and ASOS said they too are closing down their Russian business, as is Finnish telecoms giant Nokia. Manufacturing companies including General Motors, BMW and Britain's own JCB are also suspending operations in Russia. This Russia-Ukraine conflict and the East-West economic war it's provoked is clearly impacting Britain. Wholesale natural gas prices jumped 15% yesterday, 23% the day before, driving those estimated household fuel bills even higher. So On the Money today asks once more, East-West economic war, what's the impact here in Britain? Joining me, we have Howard Cox, founder of the Fair Fuel UK campaign. That represents the concerns of motorists around Britain. And here in the studio, she's back. It's Jasmine Birtles, founder of MoneyMagpie.com. Howard, let's go to you first. The RAC issued this warning, given those overnight rises in oil prices. To what extent do you think, let's cut to the chase, to what extent do you think petrol retailers are actually taking advantage here and pushing up prices higher than they need to?
Well, you know where I'm going to be coming from here, Liam. I'm afraid there is this opportunistic profiteering in the fuel supply chain. Most retailers do not make really very much margins, but 3 to 5p per litre. But the wholesalers are making something around about 25 to 30p per litre. And they're not. And what's really worrying is I'm getting reports from supporters who are sitting on forecourts seeing the signs, the prices going up in the signs on the forecourts, and yet there's no delivery. So these prices are going up on existing stocks. So to answer your question, there are certain retailers, mainly the bigger branded ones like Shell, BP, Esso and Texaco, seem to be the ones that are actually pricing willy-nilly.
Those companies which Howard just mentioned would, of course, deny that. Jasmine, you know, I am often conflicted about this. You know, I look at the pictures coming from Russia and Ukraine, countries I know well. Obviously, the humanitarian fallout is huge. Is it callous of us to sit here and talk about the impact on the costs of our motoring, on the costs of our household utility bills, given that we live in a safer country?
Well, it's a very good point. Yes, you could say that. But then what I'm hearing from my readers is that they're worried, they're anxious and they're very depressed at the moment. There's a general feeling of gloom. And it is certainly, looking at the global picture, people are very unhappy about what's happening in the Ukraine. But at the same time, they're also really worried. They were already worried before Russia went into Ukraine. And they're even more worried now about how they're going to manage. You know, it really is a question of coping with higher gas bills, as you've mentioned, massively higher petrol, food prices going up. They're not sure about what's happening with their pensions. There's the concern also over, you know, commodities, the various sort of components for all sorts of things like cars.
But don't worry, Jasmine, because the Consumer Price Index says inflation's only at 5.5%.
Yeah.
What a joke.
Well, it is.
What a joke.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, you know, prices in Europe, not just here, but across Europe, you could say over the last 6 months, gas prices have gone up by about 500%. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. And certainly in this country, if you're looking at food prices, we've said this before, basic food prices have gone up tens of percent, so it's harder to say.
And now the world shipping lines have said that they're not going to touch Russian freight coming from, the world's biggest wheat exporter, which is what Russia is. Let's turn to Joe Malinowski of the Energy Shop. Joe, welcome back to On the Money. It's the same old, I'm afraid. We're now seeing, aren't we? We know that the off-gem energy price cap for households is going up to the best part of £2,000 a year on average for the household fuel bill, utility bill from April. But given these spiralling wholesale gas prices, we've got very reputable analysts like Cornwall Analysts, a very well-known consultancy in the energy market, saying we could be looking at £3,000 for the off-gem energy price cap in October. Is that far-fetched?
No, absolutely not. I mean, the way wholesale markets are trading at the moment, we are very much in the zone of £3,000. I mean, to put that into context, this time last year, we were at 1,138 just before the series of increases. And to put that into numbers that average household might understand, so we were roughly at around about £87 per month for the average household for a direct debit. If it hits 3,000, that's going up to £250 a month. I mean, it's a huge increase, and that's the first order effect. The second order effect, of course, as you mentioned just now, is inflation, because gas and electricity bills account for just over 4.2% of the CPI. Once you add in a 236% increase in that on its own adds 6 percentage points plus to the CPI before the second order effects, before fuel prices, before energy goes into the cost of everything else. If we don't hit 10% inflation by the end of this year, I'll be very, very surprised.
Indeed, what you're saying, Joe, is you're talking about the CPI, the basket of goods used to generate the headline inflation number. You're completely right. And consider, as you well know, we've discussed it a lot, for lower income households, more vulnerable households, those fuel bills are a much, much higher share of what they actually spend, aren't they? Howard, Michael O'Leary, the head of Ryanair, he said this morning that he considers this oil and gas price increases are going to lead to, in his words, severe increases in the price of flights this summer. That's pretty inevitable. A company like Ryanair, a big chunk of its costs, it will be made up with aviation fuel and other kinds of hydrocarbons. To what extent do you think this can continue? How long do you think not just motorists but all of us can stand fuel price increases to this extent? Because after all, that's a really, really important question, isn't it, in terms of how long we can sustain these sanctions?
Well, it's an incredible question. It's very difficult to answer. My intro is full of people saying they're worried sick. They can't afford to pay bills. We're talking about heating just now. You're talking about airlines. Everything regarding the oil prices it inflicts on everything we do, eating, etc. The Road Haulage Association, who backs Fairfield UK, we're thankful, they're calling for immediate action by the government to do something about it. And they can do that because there's the amount of money they're getting. And, I'm obviously close to petrol and diesel. The VAT is pouring in, something like £2 to £3 billion more than expected. That's equivalent to a 9p cut in fuel duty. But the most important thing is they can do something about it now, Liam. And why are they not doing something about it? They're just acting like Tweedledee and Tweedledum. And we're calling on them to actually do something now.
Well, they can certainly scrap the VAT on fuel bills, can't they? Household fuel bills, which we've been calling for on the money for months now. I'm astonished that ministers aren't doing that. Who knows? We've got Rishi Sunak's spring statement coming up on the 23rd of March. That's Wednesday, the 23rd of March. I bet the ranch that he's going to have to do something to respond to these price rises. Jasmine, you run moneymagpie.com. It's an important forum, isn't it, for people coming together with their money concerns. You must be getting a lot of traffic now. Yeah, we are, yes. And people are looking for, frankly, any help at all, for particularly with food, energy bills. And, people like me are running out of things to say to make it easier because, there's only so much you can say about putting more jumpers on, reducing the making sure you're eligible or not for benefits. Absolutely. And that is a big one. I've been telling people a lot about Turn to Us, Entitled To. They have benefits calculators. There is help. Also, talk to your local council. There are some councils have extra help. But really, as you say, government needs to do something much bigger. They need to take off the VAT at least for a start. And they need to stop pretending that inflation is only 5.5%. We're going to carry on this conversation after the break with Jasmine Birtles, with Howard Cox of the Fair Fuel Campaign, with Joe Malinowski of the Energy Shop, as ever here on The Money with me, Liam Halligan. Grown-up discussions with people who really know their stuff. Stay with us. You're on The Money.
Hello again. Something of a dull, damp sandwich today. A slice of the country, dull and soggy, but some brighter skies across the east and some sunny spells developing in the far west as well. The reason we have a weather front kind of stagnating across the UK. There's not a lot of isobars on the charts, so not a lot of wind to shift it. So stuck under this weather front, you're going to see a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain. Southern and central Scotland, northwest England, much of Wales, down across the Midlands as well. But for the far southwest of England, Pembrokeshire, Northern Ireland, west coast of Scotland, mostly dry and bright. And from Yorkshire down to southeast England, also staying largely fine. And here, the top temperature's 10 in Hull, 13 in London, but stuck under that rain band 7 or 8 in Newcastle and Manchester at the very best. And that rain bands will only slowly work further eastwards through the night. So staying pretty soggy, the rain pepping up across eastern Scotland, pushing more widely across northeast England, perhaps turning a lot drier across Wales overnight, but we'll keep a lot of cloud. That'll help to keep the temperatures up, but with some clearer skies. South Wales, Northern Ireland, temperatures may dip close to freezing. Under that zone of cloud and rain, though, temperatures will hold up. But it will feel cold again here through Friday. East coast of Scotland, northeast England, parts of East Anglia, maybe still into parts of the Midlands. Dull, damp, dank again. A bit more rain across the southeast of England on Friday compared to today as well. But further west again, generally dry, a brighter day across the Midlands, although still predominantly cloudy and still quite chilly with temperatures suppressed in single figures where we've got that rain, which is likely to linger in parts of the east even into the weekend. So we'll continue to see some outbreaks of rain across southeast Scotland, eastern parts of England on Saturday. Elsewhere, many places will be dry and bright with some sunny spells in the west and staying largely dry into Monday as well, and also turning colder.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan. It's 1:23. As this ghastly Russia-Ukraine conflict continues, we're talking about the economic fallout here in the UK, the rising cost of living, what this conflict means for you here at home. After all, the fallout here will help to determine how long the Western world can sustain these sanctions against Russia. I'm still with my expert panel. Let's go back to Joe Malinowski, who's the founder of the Energy Shop. So, Joe, your latest thinking, a lot of people will be looking at these new estimates suggesting that in October there could be a renewed increase in the energy price cap from around just under £2,000, where we know it's going in April. This is the price cap for household fuel bills, to almost £3,000 based on current wholesale price rises in energy markets. Should people now be looking for some kind of fix looking forward? What's your advice?
This is a really difficult market. I get asked this an extraordinary amount at the present moment in time, and it's a difficult one. So clearly, if you knew what the outcome was going to be of this potential conflict and where it was going to take prices, then we would have some sort of certainty as to what we could do. But we just don't have that crystal ball. We don't know where prices are going to go. Although, increasingly unlikely to come down. But the situation is as follows. If you're on a price cap product at the moment, you're paying $12.77. There's nothing remotely close to that. From 1st of April, we're seeing that 54% increase to $19.71. Again, there's nothing remotely close to that. The open market, where it exists, is already trading at £3,500 to £4,000. And those prices
average fuel bill.
For the average household, indeed. And those prices don't yet reflect the increased cap. So it looks like even if we get an increase in October, that will still be the cheapest price available to consumers at the time. It's because the price cap always calculated is a lagging indicator. It takes part of the past and part of the future, and as prices are going up, the past is below the future. Your tendency is always going to be the cheapest. So if there was a fixed price product out there for less than £2,000 right now for the average household, I'd have to say you would take it. As long as there wasn't a huge exit penalty associated with it, you would have to take it. They just, unfortunately, do not exist.
It's so tough, Joe. It's really difficult. Howard Cox, let's go back to you. You're old enough, if I may say so, as indeed am I, to remember the 1970s. We remember when the Russians invaded Afghanistan, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. That was a time of really high inflation, wasn't it? In 1979, 1980, the timing seems to be the same now, maybe because the Russians want leverage. It's harder to sanction energy exports, isn't it, when we're already suffering from really high prices. Does this feel like the 70s to you, Howard Cox?
Thank you for reminding me of that, Liam. Yes, it does feel that way indeed. Obviously, interest rates were very, very much higher. You know, just buying a house, I mean, you're looking at incredible costs in terms of interest-only mortgages. I think this is the worrying thing about what's happening at the moment, is that no one's actually fact-checking whether we're getting the right prices. We assume that when the prices go up, no one's actually asking, hey, how did you arrive at that? And I think there's too much betting on the volatility that's going on in the marketplaces, rather than actually telling us, right, it's gone up by $2, $3, $4. That means it will go up by half a pence for diesel or petrol. We just do not know that. We have to accept it. And you made the point about the RAC, the average prices they're talking about. You know, we're going to hit 151, 160. We're going to smash past those. It's going to be 165, 170 easily in the next month. And potentially, yes, we can look at the supermarket, not the supermarkets, the motorway service stations. They're going to exceed £2. Watch this space, mark my words.
Jasmine, all eyes on the Chancellor. We know there's a spring statement on Wednesday, March the 23rd. I mean, he can't say, oh, I need to, clean up the public finances. I need to balance the books. He's going to have to splurge big time.
Well, he is, absolutely. I mean, we've said a few times on this programme that he cannot put up national insurance. I mean, that's just a small thing. Yeah. But, yeah, he must not. And he must come up with ways to help. I was going to say the vulnerable, but frankly, you're talking middle income, everything in the country.
People who previously thought they were comfortable. Yes. That's what spiralling cost of living does, right? It drags everybody into a situation where they're really having to count their pennies. Absolutely. We're not talking about champagne here. We're talking literally about the basics of life. So I think we need to see that. I'd also like to see a sensible approach to fracking potentially, and this has been a very difficult subject. They're going to lift the moratorium, aren't they? They're going to have to allow fracking in the UK. We're going to have to look at it at the very least. Jasmine Birtles, MissMoneyMagpie.com. Thanks for joining us. Howard Cox of the Fair Fuel Campaign, and indeed Joe Malinowski of the Energy Shop. Thanks for a fabulous, though difficult but realistic discussion here on The Money. Talking about realistic, I'm now joined by Mark White, GB News Home and Security Editor. Mark, great to have you in the studio. Thanks for joining me as ever. You are doing hourly reports almost on the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. You're using your contacts not just within security services in various countries, but also on the ground in Russia and Ukraine. Very, very tough subject to discuss. But let's just turn the telescope round a little bit, just for the purposes of discussion here on The Money. You've been watching my show, you've been listening to very well-informed people talking about rising prices, talking about cost of living increases, talking about the political implications of those, for all the support for Ukraine in this country, for all the applause in the House of Commons, very moving, for the Ukrainian ambassador in the cockpit of the nation yesterday. As these cost of living increases bite it does mean that politicians here have got decisions to make about whether or not these harsh sanctions can be continued, right?
Yes, I think so. And the public as well, I think, need to realise that this is a two-way street and that they will suffer economically as a consequence. Now, you can understand when the images are coming out of Ukraine, the desire on the part of the British public to impose this economic stranglehold on Russia and Vladimir Putin's regime. But the difficulty with that is when you stop products leaving Russia or sending products to Russia, you're impacting UK industry, all kinds of sectors, from fashion to cosmetics, the car manufacturing, electronics. All of these companies are involved in sending products to Russia and, of course, taking raw products and components from Russia to help with the manufacture of these particular products as well. They can't get that. The prices go up. The price then that anyone in the UK is paying for these services and products is going to skyrocket too.
You know, many of us have the impression, even those of us who didn't live during the Cold War, that Russia is just an economy of oil and gas and it's a very backward and unsophisticated economy. Let me tell you, I've lived in the former Soviet Union a lot. It's where I cut my journalistic teeth. There has been massive Western investment. There has been massive investment by Russian entrepreneurs. This is now a major market for Western consumer goods. This is now a major exporter, not just of commodities, foodstuffs, as you say, but other things as well that we need. For me, Mark, the really amazing thing in the last 24 hours in terms of the economics, not the war and the humanitarian crisis, which you cover so ably, if I may say so, the really big thing is the fact that some of the world's biggest shipping lines are now saying they won't touch freight going into or out of Russia. Maersk, MSC, Ocean Network Express, these are the red blood cells of the global economy bloodstream. The fact that this is going to have a massive economic impact.
There's no doubt about it. And clearly, goods going into Russia is going to put a very difficult stranglehold on that country in receiving the vital supplies that it needs. But taking very vitally important products out of Russia to the West is going to be impacted very significantly as well. It is the world's biggest supplier of wheat. We can't tell you how many industries in the West rely on that wheat for their products. Where are they going to get the wheat if they can't get it bulk carried around the world, as so much of the vital products that the world relies on are carried by sea? And if these massive shipping companies are going to refuse to do business in the meantime with Russia, it's going to be very difficult. I wanted to talk about the aviation industry as well. Very good friend of mine who works in the aviation industry said that it's going to have an enormous impact on them as well, because at the moment, in terms of their fuel costs, they hedge, they bulk well in advance, months in advance, but eventually that's going to run out. They're going to have to renegotiate at a time when fuel prices are rising anyway. Add to that the price of the conflict and what that is doing to the price of fuel, and then add into that the fact that they're having to reroute. They can't go through Russia.
The journeys will be longer. Journeys will be longer.
So they would go through Russia.
It's a country that spans 11 time zones.
Exactly. You would, if you were flying from the UK, for instance, to head to the likes of Beijing or Hong Kong, you are going to be routing through Russia. You can't do that anymore. You're taking a lower level route. You're going to be paying more in fuel prices. So that added to the fact that fuel prices are going up, then the cost to the airlines is going to be significantly increased at a time when they're coming out of COVID and trying to rebuild the number of passengers who are flying again. And of course, ultimately, the consumer, the passenger, is going to have to pay for that in higher airfares.
You know, Mark, we'll continue, won't we, on GB News, not least through your skill to report on this war, the military conflagration, the humanitarian aspects, but we must also talk about the economic and financial implications. It's part and parcel of the story and I really appreciate your input. Thank you. Mark White there, GB News Home and Security Editor. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. Coming up, today's Money Talks interview with Mike Cherry. He's from the Federation of Small Businesses. From national insurance hikes to spiralling energy bills and rising interest rates, we discuss how small firms are coping with the uncertainties of today. But first, the GB News headlines with Rhiannon Jones.
It's 1:35. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. An Estonian-owned cargo ship has sunk off the Ukrainian coast near Odessa following an explosion. The ship's manager says it may have hit a mine. He also says 4 crew members are missing. That as a Bangladeshi cargo ship was struck by a missile at the Ukrainian Black Sea port of Olvia. This video purportedly shows the vessel on fire, posted by the Ukrainian government. 1 crew member has been killed, and the Bangladeshi government says rescue efforts are underway to save others. In breaking news, 9 people have been killed and 4 wounded after a Russian airstrike hit 2 schools and houses in Chernihiv, according to the city's governor. Meanwhile, conflicting reports are emerging on whether the Ukrainian city of Kherson has been seized by Russian troops. The UK's Ministry of Defence says that despite heavy shelling, the cities of Chernihiv, Kharkiv and Mariupol remain in Ukrainian hands. The International Criminal Court is launching an investigation into alleged war crimes. In the largest referral in the history of the ICC, the UK and 37 allies have called for a probe into Russia's atrocities. It follows reports that cluster and vacuum bombs have been dropped in residential areas. Moscow denies it's targeting civilians. The sporting world is also taking action, with Formula One announcing it's terminated its Russian Grand Prix contract. Meanwhile, athletes from Russia and Belarus will not be allowed to compete at the 2022 Winter Paralympics in Beijing. The International Paralympic Committee has reversed its original decision to allow them to take part from Saturday under a neutral flag. TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. It's Liam and On the Money. In just a moment, don't go anywhere.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan. It's 1:39. Now, March typically sees the biggest sales of new cars with the introduction of new registration plates. And the 2022 registrations were indeed released this week. The costs of motoring, though, they're on the rise, and not just as we've been hearing in terms of petrol and diesel prices, because the average UK insurance premium rose by £76 year on year during the first 2 weeks of last month. This comes as the Financial Conduct Authority introduces new rules which they say make car insurance pricing fairer. Here to discuss this, I'm joined by James Baggott. He's editor-in-chief of Car Dealer magazine, and I'm still with Miss Money Magpie, Jasmine Birtles, here in the studio. Jasmine, let's start with you, if I may, before we turn to James. What's going on here? What's the Financial Conduct Authority doing that it says will make insurance premiums fairer, but actually may not?
Well, yes. So last year they said that they should stop what's called price walking. So therefore, insurance companies for home insurance and car insurance needed to offer the same deals to existing customers that they would to new customers, which is fairer. I mean, to be fair, you know, when people like me are saying, oh, get all these new deals, it isn't right.
So existing customers aren't subsidising as they try and reach for new customers to build their book.
Exactly, totally. Which, as I say, is fairer. But what's happened now is, according to Consumer Intelligence, the average price of car finance, car insurance and home insurance have both gone up. So home insurance has gone up by 9.1%. This was in January. And car insurance went up by 4.9%. And they're saying this is as a direct result of this fairer rule, sorry to say.
Wow, that's really interesting. James Baggott, I'm sure you monitor car insurance premiums very, very closely as the editor-in-chief of Car Dealer magazine. What do you make of these new rules from the Financial Conduct Authority? They seem to be well-intentioned. What's the reality?
Well, I think they are. I mean, price walking was a huge con in the first place. I mean, the fact that existing customers got a worse deal than the new customers was never really on, was it? I mean, I must say last year, one of my policies crept up by £200, which was ridiculous. I went onto a comparison website and the same insurer gave me a cheaper price than the one that they'd quoted on a renewal. Well, that's just not on. So I think the fact that this has happened is a good thing, but the reason prices have gone up is they've got to make up their money elsewhere. And there's a number of other factors too that have pushed these prices up.
Yes, James. I mean, I keep a sort of close eye, or a cursory eye, if you like, on insurance markets. Of course, insurers buy their insurance off the reinsurers, the sort of big wholesale insurers. They're facing much higher claims, aren't they, because of weather-related events and all kinds of other issues. What do you think the FCA can do? What do you think consumers can do to try and counter the fact that average premiums, as Jasmine Birtles was explaining, have gone up on these new FCA rules?
Consumers need to shop around. There's no doubt about it. There's lots of comparison sites out there, and you will get a better deal if you often go to a new insurer. But the FCA has done exactly the right thing by putting in these measures, because it does mean that those renewals that people normally get that push the price up without many people sleepwalk into them, really, if you do actually pay attention to them and then go and shop around, you will get a better deal. But there's lots of other things that are pushing up the price of car insurance. Things like the cost of used cars. Used cars have gone up 30% in the last year. At one point, they were going up on a daily basis. If a car has been written off, that insurer is then going to have to replace it, and it's going to cost them a lot more money to do so. So that is one of the factors that's pushing it up. Another one is the cost of parts. I mean, parts, as you've discussed, are going up across all industries, especially the car industry too. And there is a big issue getting hold of new parts. So if the new parts don't arrive to fix a car that has had an accident, that customer needs to stay in a hire car for longer, which has a knock-on impact to the insurer. So all of these costs have to be absorbed somewhere. And unfortunately, the consumer is the one that's going to probably bear the brunt eventually.
It's a really interesting point, isn't it, Jasmine? Yeah. If your car's written off, if a second-hand car, they need to replace it like for like, if that's what your policy says. We all know the price, not just of new cars, as James was explaining, but used cars is going through the roof because of a shortage of cars, because car makers aren't making cars because of supply chain issues, which will then be aggravated by this Russia-Ukraine conflict. even more. And I guess we have to have a kind of change of mindset, don't we? I think that because I've been with an insurer a long time, they might actually look after me and give me a nice price. But actually, no.
Not
Is it worth being a new consumer every year, changing every year so you get that new rate?
Well, yeah, this has certainly always been the case, and of course that was the point of what the FCA's said no, don't do the price walking. But actually, you still have a very competitive market. Motor insurance, in particular, is highly competitive. So it's highly likely that just by switching, you will get a better deal. But certainly, it's a good idea to speak to your current insurer and go, come on, something better than that, please.
Jasmine Birtles, MissMoneyMagpie.com, thanks for joining us. And James Baggett, who is the editor-in-chief of Car Dealer magazine. Now, lots of you got in touch about today's show on East-West conflict and the impact on energy prices. Richard says, remove green levies and begin fracking. We buy coal from Russia, but we have a new coal mine in Cumbria that the Green Lobby are against. Get it producing and generate more jobs. Caroline emailed gbviews@gbnews.uk. It's about time the monthly charge of utility meters is stopped. The big energy companies are still making billions on the backs of the public. Also, cancel that increase in national insurance. The government's making billions on taxation of fuel, a point that Howard Cox, a Fair Fuel campaign, made. Roger contacted us to say, please explain why the UK pays world prices for gas and oil extracted from its territorial water when the cost of processing it to usable fuel has not changed markedly. It's a good question. Keep your emails coming. We appreciate them all. Time now at 1:46 for my daily interview series, Money Talks. Now, small and medium-sized businesses are integral to the British economy. They account for 2/3 of private sector employment and over half of all commercial activity. But there's no denying it's been a difficult few months, a difficult few years for many of the UK's small firms. They've been hit by the chaos and related uncertainty of the COVID pandemic. And even before this Russia-Ukraine conflict happened, inflation was already at a 30-year high. Businesses are also feeling the shock of higher energy prices, again related to Russian sanctions. Wholesale oil and gas prices are increasing. And as we often say here on The Money, there is no price cap on energy bills for firms, unlike for households. Now, no one knows these difficulties better than Mike Cherry. He's the national chairman of the Federation of Small Businesses since 2016. So here he is, Mike Cherry, today's guest on Money Talks. Mike, great to have you back on the show. You're turning into an On The Money regular. The reason is that here on The Money and here on GB News, we really value Britain's small and medium-sized firms. We don't think you get enough airtime. We think the media focuses too much on the big businesses that, frankly, can look after themselves. It's a tough time for your members, isn't it?
It's a very tough time for our members, and we've already seen the supply chain chaos coming in at the back end of the pandemic. We have seen the inflationary impact of all of that coming through. And, you were talking earlier about the CPI index just showing 5.5%. But, of course, in the supply chain, that's been running at double digits now for some time. And as you've also mentioned, small businesses do not have that energy cap protection that us as consumers have. So it's really, really worrying time for many small businesses. And of course, you've seen so many providers go out of the market. They've fallen over for whatever reason. And that has meant that the prices that businesses are having to pay when they come to renew any contracts are going through the roof as well at the moment. So the inflationary pressures are already there. And on top of that, we still face the government insisting that they're going to push through this national insurance rise of 1.25% for both businesses, the amount the employer pays, and indeed for us as individuals, as employees. So there's some real inflationary pressures coming through. And even before that comes in April, we've been calling for the employment allowance to be increased from £4,000 to £5,000 to help businesses as they come out of that pandemic. So it's a
to take more people on to get the economy moving.
Absolutely. And
we're meant to be in the middle of a V-shaped recovery, aren't we? It doesn't feel very V-shaped to me.
Well, it's a very, very difficult time for businesses. And of course, they don't have any headroom to be able to absorb any of these increases. So that in itself means that businesses are having to push through price increases as we speak.
Now, it is Rishi Sunak's spring statement, to all intents and purposes, a budget on Wednesday, the 23rd of March. Let me publicly invite you here and now, Mike Cherry, to be on our panel on Budget Day. As I say, we really value the input from Britain's small firms, vital to our economy. Rishi Sunak, Chancellor, should he climb down on this national insurance increase? We know other cabinet members are pressuring him to do so. He wants to burnish his credentials as a prudent iron chancellor. But surely he can just blame Russia. He can say, new world, new facts, I've changed my mind. This conflict means we can't impose these tax rises at the moment. We need to give businesses a break.
Well, certainly he shouldn't be imposing that. But also he can do more in reducing the amount of VAT that is imposed on the energy cost that businesses have to pay, and most importantly, increase that employment allowance so that the businesses can benefit from that as well, to get the economy back into full gear and get small businesses right at the heart of that economic recovery that we also desperately need, whatever is happening in Ukraine. And of course, our thoughts have to be with every individual out in Ukraine who's suffering from this horrible, horrible war that Russia has just unilaterally imposed.
Well said, that man. Mike, cheer me up. This has been a really tough show. I don't want to alarm our viewers and listeners. I don't want to be unduly pessimistic. I'm basically quite an optimistic person. There must be some good news when we look around the British economy. Our small firms, they're so often the lifeblood of innovation, of investment, of new ideas, of progress. Tell me something to cheer me up.
Well, you're absolutely right on that innovation and you know, wanting to get the economy going. But also, if you look at what the UK has been doing with its free trade agreements, we've just had the signing off of the UK-New Zealand trade agreement. We've had the Australian one. We've had the Japanese one. The UK
These are big trading partners for the UK.
CPTPP, which is the Pan-Pacific one. So there are some real opportunities out there if businesses are able to just look further afield, as well as opportunities still between the UK and the EU, despite all of the increased bureaucracy around the dealings there. But look further afield. If you've got products or services that you feel should be open to other markets, go for it.
You know, in the end, if you look back through history, when we face dark hours, if you like, and no one's saying that what's happening here in the UK is a patch on anything that's happening in Ukraine or the surrounding countries in terms of human anguish. Of course, we're not saying that, but we do need to generate a prosperous economy. If we are going to keep these sanctions on, if we are going to provide good lives for the vast majority of our population as well, Mike. So to what extent do you think we should be pushing the government to help businesses do that? Do you think this is genuinely a pro-business government? Because in my long experience of following British politics and policy making, it doesn't look like it to me.
Well, it's incredibly difficult when you look at that in the round because, of course, the government has helped small businesses. FSB were absolutely at the heart of the furlough scheme, looking to help and get that support through to the self-employed and all the other areas where we have interjected very, very closely with the government on the support measures that were put in. So, of course, you know, one has to respect that it is very difficult times, but at the end of the day, it will be small businesses that lead this economic recovery, that need that help, as we've already mentioned, some very specific ones. And I think Rishi Sunak, at his spring statement, is really going to have to look at this much more carefully, given all of the problems that are out in the global arena at the moment.
Two things really worry me ahead of the spring statement, which maybe the Chancellor can address. Energy bills, particularly for small firms, there's no energy price cap, particularly firms that employ lots of people in those red wall seats that the Tories need to retain. Plus business rates, that standing tax on the value of businesses, their physical premises, which businesses, your members, must pay, whether they make profit or not, whether they take in any money from customers or not. Surely, under those two headings, we need to see some action from the Chancellor.
We do need to see some better action from the Chancellor on that. I mean, there is support for the smallest businesses. They are excluded, thanks to FSB and others who've interjected on that issue over many, many years now. But there's another one there that actually the government could be doing a lot more about as well, and that is this vexed issue, this cultural issue that we almost fall into of late payment. And if we can make sure that with the enterprise bill that's coming forward, that we have in there responsibility given to the audit committees of large corporates who already have
to pay what they owe on time to small
make
companies.
sure that they sign up to the prompt payment code. Anybody supplying the public sector should sign up to that code. 30 days max. Let's get our money. So we've got that money instead of it sitting in large corporates who have access to the financial markets, whereas small businesses don't. Free that money up and let's get the investment going.
Labour are talking a lot about business rates. They're talking about either scrapping them or curtailing them to some degree. It's 35 billion pounds a year in government revenue. And we haven't yet had that proper review, have we, from the Chancellor on business rates? I'm sure, are you writing it for him, or certainly you're writing suggested legislation for him, surely?
It's not just a review that we need, it's a fundamental reform of how are we going to tax businesses in the future.
Particularly high streets that are competing with the online giants.
The problem that you've got with business rates, it's like national insurance contributions. It's an upfront tax that businesses have to pay out almost before they employ anybody or sell anything. So that needs fundamental reform at the outset.
Mike Cherry, we're going to see you here 23rd of March for the spring statement. I think that's a yes. That's all we've got time for. Mike Cherry there of the Federation of Small Businesses. Thanks for joining me today. I'm sorry the show is tough. We're not being alarmist. We're trying to be realistic. We're back same time, same place tomorrow. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and here on GB News TV and DAB Plus digital radio, that was On the Money.
Hello again. Something of a dull, damp sandwich today. A slice of the country, dull and soggy, but some brighter skies across the east and some sunny spells developing in the far west as well. The reason, we have a weather front kind of stagnating across the UK. There's not a lot of isobars on the charts, so not a lot of wind to shift it. So stuck under this weather front, you're going to see a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain. Southern and central Scotland, northwest England, much of Wales, down across the Midlands as well. But for the far southwest of England, Pembrokeshire, Northern Ireland, west coast of Scotland, mostly dry and bright. And from Yorkshire down to southeast England, also staying largely fine. And here, the top temperature's 10 in Hull, 13 in London, but stuck under that rain band 7 or 8 in Newcastle and Manchester at the very best. And that rain bands will only slowly work further eastwards through the night. So staying pretty soggy, the rain pepping up across eastern Scotland, pushing more widely across northeast England, perhaps turning a lot drier across Wales overnight, but we'll keep a lot of cloud. That'll help to keep the temperatures up, but with some clearer skies. South Wales, Northern Ireland, temperatures may dip close to freezing. Under that zone of cloud and rain, though, temperatures will hold up. But it will feel cold again here through Friday. East coast of Scotland, northeast England, parts of East Anglia, maybe still into parts of the Midlands. Dull, damp, dank again. A bit more rain across the southeast of England on Friday compared to today as well. But further west again, generally dry, a brighter day across the Midlands, although still predominantly cloudy and still quite chilly with temperatures suppressed in single figures where we've got that rain, which is likely to linger in parts of the east even into the weekend. So we'll continue to see some outbreaks of rain across southeast Scotland, eastern parts of England on Saturday. Elsewhere, many places will be dry and bright with some sunny spells in the west and staying largely dry into Monday as well, and also turning colder.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite